We're back, everybody, with our second segment with Valene Skerpac. All right, this is IGTV, a production of New York City Metro InfraGard Members Alliance, and Valene is talking about the top five threat categories for biometric authentication systems. Hey, Valene, how you doing?
Very good.
All right. Well, we said we are going to start off at the user tab, so go ahead.
Right,
We've got it up on the screen.
right. It's important. Users now have gone from struggling to remembering passwords to now having to manage their identity. And they need a lot of assistance in this area. On one hand, there's a lot of trepidation and stigma associated with a biometric application associated with a large organization such as the government. Um, and yet there's a willingness to overtrust in internet applications with their biometrics. So clear policies are definitely needed as a way to address this, as well as training for the user. It's part of our identity management. At the application level, how is the biometric being used in context? There's a lot of biometrics I would see cropping up on the internet now that I would call kind of toys. They're sort of fun, have limited use. But really, how have we established what their security is and what the policies and procedures are around that? Obviously, if people sign up thinking the biometric is one thing and it then begins to be used in another way, that represents a threat to the user's identity. So we need, for those smaller organizations, to have some education and know that they need to have control over the use of the biometric in their policies and the way their applications are built and how they use them within their application. At the performance level, this becomes very key with biometrics. It is affected by population and environmental effects. So there need to be thorough testing for the targeted use that you have, or as you expand the use of the biometric, how is that actually performing on a larger population in a very different environments? All these can affect the biometric performance. So we need to have some policies and procedures, especially given that, if you look out there, there are open source engines for voice, finger, face out there that can be incorporated, and so the performance can't be ignored if it's going to be used effectively. It's an important aspect of an overall biometric. At the system level, I think these are kind of some of the things that we often hear about. For example, what we call spoofing attacks, the gummy bear or fake fingerprint liveness issues. So we have to be concerned about spoofing issues, whether it's at the system component level or during transmission. And similarly, a recording or just a video or a picture of an individual that can be played back to the biometric input. We have to be concerned about spoofing here and devise techniques to address that. Data insertion, inserting in imposter information so that they actually are the one that gets enrolled, for example. The score manipulation, I think we talked about during our first session. We kind of went through an overview of the architecture and the fact that when we try to match the input, your biometric input, with the model on file, we come up with a score. Then we say, hey, does that score at least exceed or meet the threshold we have that's going to guarantee some kind of performance? So if somebody starts changing our scores, their scores as an imposter, they could get access. There's the database compromise, stealing the biometric either data or model. There's been a lot of work in this new standard that I talked about, the 24745, that talks about having a sort of token biometric, or one that can be fooled, basically replaced, so it's not the actual biometric, so that it would have a possibility of being used again. In other words, you don't lose your fingerprint ID. So there's a whole sort of standard around implementing that, if that's important to the biometric, especially a static biometric such as a fingerprint. You have to worry about hill climbing attacks. Can somebody continually input data, looking at the score, and try to formulate the input so somehow it passes? Can they change that threshold, make it very low to get access? So these are the types of system and architectural vulnerabilities that can happen and can be addressed with the proper, either adding of controls to that biometric, or with the other factors of authentication or other controls or mechanisms. And finally, the top 5 threat is one of biometric spoofing. If the person is allowed to enroll in as the owner of that identity, and in fact they're not the owner of the identity, for high security applications, that's a major problem. So in that case, we need to implement policies and procedures to ensure the level of enrollment for those higher security applications. Sometimes that involves going out to other sources, doing some question and answer. Whatever, each industry will tend to have its own regulations in that area, so you need to add those to the enrollment procedure. And so those are the top 5 threats. I know we're keeping it short today, but each one of these areas was really got lots of very interesting areas to continue to discuss and to delve into on the blog. So that's about it for today as an overview for us to use.
Well, thank you, Valene. We certainly appreciate it. And are you going to flip your screen back to us?
Okay, absolutely.
Okay, great. It's always a nice way to end the call up. So
Yes,
we get to see your face before we say goodbye.
Okay. Very good. Yeah.
All right.
So
you got to flip the.
see me now?
There we go.
All right, great.
We got you back. All right.
Excellent.
That was a very good overview, and that's what these videos are really meant for, right? To give people a little bit of a taste, a little bit of a sense of what's going on in this specific area. If they wanted to, they could certainly go over to Valene's blog and learn more information. Valene, why don't you give them your URL for the blog?
Sure. It's of course www.ibiometrics.com, and that's IBIOMETRICS.
All right. Well, that's our session today with Valene Skerpac, and she's from iBiometrics, and that was the top 5 threat categories with biometric authentication systems. Valene, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming on the program today.
Thanks.
All right. Take care now.
Bye now.